When the heart forgets its source, the world becomes heavier than it truly is. But when the heart remembers, even a single breath becomes a doorway back to God. Today, we explore Ibn Arabi's deepest secret, Dhikr, not as a ritual, but as the return of the soul to its origin. Dhikr is not merely the movement of the tongue, it is the movement of existence itself. Ibn Arabi teaches that everything in the universe remembers God, the mountains, the stars, the winds, even the silence between two heartbeats. The entire cosmos is engaged in continuous remembrance, because nothing can remain alive without recalling the one who gives life at every instant. Human beings, however, have been given a special gift, the ability to remember God consciously. This transforms Dhikr from a reflex of existence into an act of love. To Ibn Arabi, Dhikr is the journey from forgetfulness to awakening. He says that the real veil is not the world, the real veil is your distracted heart. The moment the heart turns inward, the veil tears. Dhikr is not done to please God. Dhikr is done to awaken yourself to how near He already is. When you say Allah, you are not calling a distant being, you are uncovering the presence that has always been inside your breath, your pulse, your awareness. Dhikr is the polishing of the mirror that has always held the face of the beloved. Dhikr is an art because it has to be tasted, not performed. Some remember God with words, some remember God with silence, some remember God with tears, some remember God with astonishment, and some remember God with love so deep that even words collapse. Ibn Arabi says that the one who remembers God becomes remembered by God, and this is the highest honor a human being can receive. Your remembrance is a spark, His remembrance of you, the fire that never dies. The purpose of Dhikr is not to escape the world. The purpose is to see the divine in everything the world shows you. When the heart remembers, every sound becomes a verse, every moment becomes a sign, every breath becomes a sanctuary. The one who remembers walks in the world but belongs to another realm. He speaks, but through him the voice of the real speaks. He breathes, but within his breath the real breathes. He moves, but the one moves him. For Ibn Arabi, the highest dhikr is not repeating God's name. The highest dhikr is never forgetting who you are in relation to Him. You are the servant, the lover, the seeker, the mirror, the breath. You are the one who remembers, so that the presence may reveal itself through you. Dhikr returns you to your fitra, your original purity, the place where you and God were never separated. When remembrance becomes constant, life itself becomes an act of worship. Eating becomes dhikr, walking becomes dhikr, looking becomes dhikr, even sleeping becomes dhikr, because your heart continues the chant your tongue has surrendered to. This is why Ibn Arabi said, the true Sufi is the one whose heart remembers even when his lips are silent. For such a person, the world becomes a garden of signs, each leaf whispering the name. So practice dhikr not as repetition, but as intimacy. Let the name descend from your tongue into your heart, from your heart into your soul, and from your soul into your being. Let it become the pulse of your inner world. Let the remembrance reshape your vision until everything becomes a mirror of the One. When this happens, you do not simply remember God, you discover that God has been remembering you since the beginning of eternity. Dhikr, in the vision of Ibn Arabi, is not a ritual learned from books or a sound repeated by habit. It is the soul returning to the origin it has always known yet temporarily forgotten. Before the body was formed, before the mind learned language, before the world revealed its countless distractions, the soul existed in a state of pure nearness. Dhikr is the echo of that nearness. When a person remembers God, he does not create a connection. He uncovers the connection that has never been broken. It is like wiping dust off a mirror that has always held the reflection. The essence of remembrance is therefore not outward action, but inward recognition. When the heart remembers, the distance collapses. When the heart forgets, even the closest presence feels far. This is why Ibn Arabi says remembrance is a return, not a search. You are not seeking what you do not know. You are awakening to what you always carried within yourself. The heart is naturally oriented toward its source, but the noise of the world overwhelms its inclination. Every desire, fear, expectation, and distraction becomes a layer over the heart. Dhikr dissolves these layers. With each remembrance, the heart sheds something that is not truly its own. The more you remember, the more the heart becomes itself. This returning is not dramatic, it is subtle, like a fragrance gradually filling a room or dawn slowly revealing the world. Ibn Arabi often speaks of the soul's longing as a sign that remembrance is already underway. Longing itself is the first dhikr. The moment you feel drawn toward God, the journey has begun. The pull you feel is not your effort, it is His invitation, and every time you respond with remembrance, you move closer to the state you were created for. Dhikr transforms because it reorders the inner world. When the heart begins to remember, everything else adjusts itself around that remembrance. Fears become smaller, desires lose power, anxieties soften, and clarity strengthens. It is not that life becomes easier, it is that your inner orientation changes. You no longer face the world with emptiness, you face it with presence. Ibn Arabi teaches that the heart remembering its Lord is like a compass needle realigning toward the true north. No matter how many times it is shaken or disturbed, it returns to its direction. Likewise, the heart anchored in remembrance returns again and again to its truth, even after moments of forgetfulness. The return to the origin through dhikr is also the return to your real identity. Most people walk through life wearing masks, roles, labels, opinions, expectations. Dhikr strips these masks away. In remembrance, you confront the one identity that does not change, the servant of God. This identity is not restrictive. It is liberating. It frees you from the burden of pretending to be something for the world. When you remember God, you remember who you are. Ibn Arabi says that the one who knows his soul knows his Lord, and the one who knows his Lord knows his soul. Dhikr is the bridge between the two forms of knowing. It takes you from self-awareness to divine awareness, and from divine awareness back to self-awareness, until the two are recognized as mirrors, reflecting each other. This return through remembrance is not linear. It is circular. You come back to what you already knew, but now with consciousness. What the soul once experienced instinctively, you now experience with understanding. The return is therefore completion. Just as a river returns to the ocean from which it came, the heart returns to the presence from which it was created. Ibn Arabi describes this return as a movement of love. Love is the force that pulls the seeker back. Love is the secret behind every remembrance. When you say the name, you are not calling God from afar. You are answering the call placed within you before time began. Dhikr is not you remembering God. It is God remembering Himself through you. The heart is only the instrument through which this divine recognition plays its melody. When this truth becomes clear, the act of remembrance becomes effortless. You no longer force yourself to remember. You simply stop forcing yourself to forget. The heart naturally gravitates toward what it loves, and the deepest love is the love of the origin. Dhikr is the heart moving toward that love with every breath, every moment, every silent turning. It is the art of returning to the one who has always been near, the one your soul recognized long before your tongue learned to say his name. For Ibn Arabi, the tongue is only the outer doorway to remembrance, a surface instrument that initiates but does not complete the act of dhikr. True remembrance begins only when the name descends from the tongue into the heart, for the heart is the real sanctuary of awareness. The tongue can speak without presence, but the heart cannot remember without transformation. This is why repetition alone does not awaken a person. What awakens him is the moment the name becomes alive within him. Words spoken without attentiveness are like knocking on a door with no intention of entering. But when the heart participates, the door opens from the inside. Ibn Arabi teaches that the heart is always silently listening, and when it hears the name with sincerity, it responds by turning its face toward the divine. That turning is the beginning of true dhikr. The heart has its own language, different from speech, different from thought. It speaks through feeling, through perception, through the subtle shifting of inner states. When the name reaches the heart, it does not remain a sound. It becomes a light. It illuminates forgotten corners of the inner world, exposing illusions and revealing truths. The heart begins to soften, to expand, to breathe differently. This is why the Sufis often say that dhikr is not what you say, It is what happens inside you when you say it. Ibn Arabi goes further and explains that the heart is the throne of divine manifestation, and remembrance is the cleansing that prepares that throne for presence. When the heart is distracted, heavy, confused, it cannot reflect the light of the name. Remembrance polishes it slowly, gently, persistently, until the heart becomes a mirror again. As remembrance deepens inwardly, perception begins to change. The world that once seemed ordinary becomes filled with signs. A breeze feels like mercy. A moment of silence feels like an invitation. A sudden clarity feels like a gift. This change is not imagination. It is the result of the heart awakening to realities it could not perceive in forgetfulness. Ibn Arabi says that the heart has veils, some thin, some thick, and every sincere moment of dhikr removes one veil. When a veil lifts, you do not see a new world. You see the same world differently. Where there was chaos, you sense order. Where there was separation, you feel unity. Where there was emptiness, you feel presence. The heart becomes the place where divine meanings descend, and this descending continues as long as remembrance continues. True dhikr also produces a subtle inner stillness. When the tongue moves and the mind wanders, the heart remains restless, but when the heart remembers, the inner turbulence settles. Even if the world outside is noisy, the heart finds its quiet center. Ibn Arabi explains that this stillness is not the absence of movement, but the presence of alignment. The heart aligned with its source no longer fights itself. Conflicts lose power. Doubts weaken. Anxieties dissolve. The person becomes inwardly spacious. There is room for clarity to arise, room for mercy to flow, room for love to expand. Such stillness is a sign that the name has taken root, and once the name takes root, it bears fruit in every aspect of the person's being. When remembrance enters the heart, it also changes the way a person acts. The tongue may still speak the same words, but the intention becomes pure. The eyes may still look at the same world, but their gaze becomes gentler. The hands may still perform the same tasks, but their work becomes worship. Nothing on the outside may appear miraculous, yet everything on the inside becomes miraculous. Ibn Arabi often says that the greatest miracle is a heart that remembers. This is because remembrance transforms a person from within without needing dramatic signs. It molds character, softens temperament, increases compassion, deepens humility, and strengthens trust. These transformations cannot be faked, nor can they be achieved by the tongue alone. Only the heart, engaged in real dhikr, can produce them. The descent of the name into the heart is not something a person controls. It is something he invites. Sincerity, presence, longing, and humility are the keys. The more sincere the remembrance, the more likely the heart is to receive the name. Ibn Arabi teaches that the heart has a natural affinity for God, like iron drawn to a magnet. When the name is spoken with sincerity, the heart moves toward it instinctively. The distance between tongue and heart may seem small, but spiritually it is vast, and crossing it requires gentleness and persistence. Every moment of remembrance that is offered with awareness brings the heart closer. Eventually, the heart begins to remember even when the tongue is silent. This is the station of true dhikr, where remembrance becomes continuous, flowing like a hidden river beneath every thought and action. In this state, the person does not perform dhikr, he becomes dhikr. According to Ibn Arabi, the universe is not a silent place. It is a living, breathing symphony of remembrance. Everything in existence performs dhikr, whether humans hear it or not. Mountains glorify, stars chant, winds whisper, oceans roar with the rhythm of divine memory, and even the smallest particle turns in obedience to the one who sustains it. Nothing exists independently. Everything is held in being through the continuous remembrance of the real. If the universe stopped remembering even for a moment, it would collapse into nothingness, for existence itself is an effect of divine attention. Ibn Arabi teaches that every created thing remembers God in the language of its own essence. A bird's flight is its dhikr. A river's flow is its dhikr. Fire's heat is its dhikr. The rising and setting of the sun is its dhikr. Everything is worshipping, but with a worship that has no need for words. The human being, however, carries the unique gift and burden of consciousness. Unlike stones or stars, humans can choose to remember or forget. This choice is both a privilege and a test. When a human remembers God willingly, he aligns himself with the natural order of the cosmos. When he forgets, he falls out of harmony with the very rhythm that sustains creation. Forgetfulness is like swimming against the current. Remembrance is like surrendering to the natural flow. Ibn Arabi describes this alignment a return to the universal harmony, a reconnection with the hidden chorus of existence. When a person engages in Dhikr, he is not initiating something new. He is joining a cosmic remembrance that was already underway long before he was born. The universe remembering God is not symbolic. Ibn Arabi means it literally. Every atom rotates with a purpose. Every heartbeat echoes with a secret name. Every breath of wind moves according to divine command. In his metaphysics, movement itself is a form of worship. The orbit of the moon, the spiral of galaxies, the unfolding of plants, the pattern of waves, all of these are expressions of obedience. They follow the laws inscribed in them, laws that mirror divine wisdom. When the Sufis say that nature, a book of signs, they mean that every creature is reciting a verse from that book. The problem is not that the world is silent. The problem is that humans have forgotten how to listen. When the heart becomes refined through Dhikr, this perception returns. The seeker begins to sense the subtle praise hidden in creation. A night sky no longer appears as a collection of stars, but as a vast, illuminated remembrance. Rain is not just water falling from the sky, but a mercy descending in rhythm. Even ordinary moments begin to glow with meaning. Ibn Arabi says that the awakened heart hears what the distracted ear cannot. It hears the remembrance of the universe and responds to it. This response is the beginning of spiritual intimacy. The seeker no longer feels separate from creation. He feels part of a single, unified act of worship. He realizes that he is not alone in remembering God. The entire cosmos is his companion. This cosmic perspective also transforms how a person sees himself. When he realizes that everything is engaged in Dhikr, he begins to understand his place in the grand design. He sees that his own remembrance is not a small act, but a continuation of the universal flow. His heart becomes like a small lantern lit by the sun of divine reality. When he remembers God, he becomes aligned with the sun, not isolated from it. Ibn Arabi often uses the imagery of the ocean and the wave. The wave appears separate, but it is always part of the ocean. Likewise, each act of human remembrance is a wave in the ocean of cosmic remembrance. It rises, falls, and merges back into the vastness from which it emerged. When humans forget, they feel isolated, anxious, burdened. This is because they are moving against the cosmic rhythm. But when they remember, they feel supported, elevated, and held. Remembrance opens the inner ear, allowing a person to perceive a divine orchestra in which everything plays its part. Even suffering, loss, and difficulty appear differently when seen through this lens. They too become signs, reminders, opportunities for awakening. Nothing is random, nothing is purposeless. Everything is part of the remembrance. Ibn Arabi says that the entire universe is in a state of sada, continuously bowing, continuously acknowledging its dependency on the real. When the human heart joins this bowing, it discovers its true rest. The seeker, who understands this, finally grasps that Dhikr is not isolated repetition, but participation in a cosmic act. Every time he says the name, he echoes the praise of stars, the devotion of rivers, the surrender of mountains. He becomes part of a wider family, a spiritual ecology that stretches from the lowest atom to the highest heaven. In this realization, loneliness disappears, fragmentation dissolves. The seeker finds his place among the worshippers of the universe, and in doing so, he discovers peace that cannot be shaken by the world because it is connected to the remembrance that sustains the world itself. When Ibn Arabi speaks about the remembrance of God becoming the identity of the seeker, he is not describing a practice performed at certain hours, but a transformation that invades the entire being of a person. As if every cell becomes a tasbih bead turning on its own, as if every breath becomes a quiet whisper returning home, as if every movement becomes a prayer traveling back to its source. And in this transformation, there is a deep truth hidden, a truth that the seeker does not discover but gradually becomes, where the boundary between the one who remembers and the one being remembered dissolves into a luminous blur. Like a wave, forgetting it is a wave and remembering it is the ocean. And in that state, the seeker begins to notice that the world no longer appears as a collection of separate objects, but as a single face mirrored in countless forms. And every form calls his heart toward the real, and he begins to feel that he is not practicing Dhikr, but Dhikr is practicing him. Not that he is taking the name of God, but the name of God is taking him, drawing him inward, reshaping his intention, polishing his heart like a stone under a river's timeless patience. And as this polishing continues, something subtle awakens in him, a vibration, a familiarity, like recognizing a voice he has always known, but forgotten under the noise of the world, and the remembrance becomes effortless. It becomes natural. It becomes his default state. Even when he seems busy in the world,